Well, the effort for a new Tampa Bay Rays stadium cleared its final political hurdle this week as Pinellas County Commissioners approved funding for a new ballpark and a mixed-use development that could transform downtown St. Petersburg. As the Tampa Bay Times reported, commissioners voted 5-2 to put $312.5 million toward the design and building of a new ballpark. The money will come from tourist development tax dollars, which the county can legally spend on a narrow range of projects meant to induce tourism, including sports venues. Commissioners Kathleen Peters, Brian Scott, Janet Long, Renee Flowers, and Charlie Justice voted in favor of the deal. Dave Eggers and Chris Latvala voted against it. So, Natalie, the opposition on that commission came from the Republicans. Some Republicans in St. Pete have said we shouldn't subsidize a public stadium, and some left-wing Democrats said the same thing. What's your take? Is this a good idea? Is it a good plan for Pinellas?
I think that ultimately the decision was, and a majority did believe that it was a good decision for them. And I think that, we've seen this discussion and debate at the state level. Whether or not there was going to be funding for stadiums has been a hearty debate. Chris Latvala had been a big part of that when he was a House member. So I'm not surprised at some of the discussion that's been had locally. And this has been an interesting, bedfellows have been a little surprising at times on this issue. But I think this is going to ultimately be very valuable for the community that it's going to be serving.
Mitch, the Sierra Club was one of the big opponents of this plan because they said, look, there's no guarantee, even though the Rays have promised, but there's no guarantee that there's going to be an energy efficient component to the stadium, that it's not going to generate solar energy guaranteed.
Yeah, they had a lot of issues. They were wanting to improve the deal. They were not against it totally. And the same thing in regards to the affordable housing concept to this. Look, there's a lot of, I think our long local nightmare is over. This has been going on for 17 years, going back to 2007. I was reading an old story last night about the Al Lang ballpark. That was the first concept back in 2007. It's supposed to open in 2011.
The waterfront stadium.
Yeah, the waterfront stadium. There was going to be a ballot measure. Let's be honest though, Stu Sternberg until a few years ago never wanted to put this ballpark where it's going to be landing at. Now supposedly it's much more dynamic, St. Petersburg. I think there's a lot of questions that we won't know for 5 years from now. It's going to take 3 years to build the stadium. Look, the Rays right now have the third worst attendance in baseball. The Miami Marlins have the second worst. You could argue that Major League Baseball has not worked in the 25 to 30 years it's been in Florida. This ballpark, once it's up and it'll be looking beautiful, maybe get sellout crowds for a year or two, but what happens after that? Chris Latvala said, we talked about, when all is said and done, this will be a $1 billion publicly funded subsidy to a billionaire. I'm not willing to put my name on that. I get why the community the legislators voted for it. It'd be a big deal not to do it, but there's still so many questions going forward.
And Janelle, what do you think about the vote?
I think this is one of those issues where, yes, there is some very vocal opposition, but I think that vocal opposition is actually in the minority. And one of the biggest things to look at here is the impact on the Black community that was originally displaced when that stadium was originally built in the 80s. The Black community has come out vehemently in favor of this, and I think that it's prudent to listen to them in this situation. So a vote against it, I think, might have been politically disadvantageous.
And Robin, there's still questions about whether or not a Black History Museum will be guaranteed and will be built under this new deal.
Yeah, there was a hard fought fight in regards to that stadium, and there was some community, people in the Black community that were against it. Not totally against it, but they wanted something more. They wanted affordable housing. They wanted something other than a marker of their existence there. They felt like that the stadium, they were owed something because they were displaced through the other process, but I don't know. It's going to be interesting, and things that they've promised, it appears that it's coming in later, like years later. Yeah. So I'm not sure.
And again, it's one of those things where fast forward, 20 years and see where we're at then. Maybe not even 20. This could potentially be a bellwether for projects in other places in the future. That similarly, we looked at projects in Oakland, for example, as kind of to test where we were going to be at with our project. And I think people will look at this to say, did they deliver on their promises? Was this worth the investment?
Major League Baseball did not want them to leave. This is like the 13th or 12th biggest media market in the country. So, you know, you don't want to, they talk about expansion. They haven't expanded since the Rays in 1998. Baseball is a little different than it used to be in terms of how the public perceives it and the like. Rays fans are always, or their supporters have always said, like, well, we get great TV ratings, you know, like there is support here. But, you know, you really got to go to the games. I mean, that's what really we look at. And it's been a debate for years, decades, about whether Ybor City would have been more appropriate, what have you. They were talking about playing half their games in Montreal just a few years ago. So, again, a lot of questions here.
Yeah, it's so hard to get to the games, too, if you're in Polk or Pinellas County or Hillsborough County.
yeah.